If you want to do a 3D printing time-lapse like this one, I'm going to show you a way which I didn't saw many people doing. So if you have Octoprint installed and an Arduino on your 3D printer, you should probably watch another video because the method we are using today is mechanically triggering the camera. So what many people are doing is that they buy themselves these remote triggers and attach them on the side of your 3D printer and simply triggering it with the hot end, running into it with something like a finger on top or anything like that. But I thought that I could actually use this limit switch I have left over from installing an BL Touch on my 3D printer. So I am going to replace this remote with the limit switch and another switch. So this will look much cleaner and I don't have to worry that something will break off and I end up with no time-lapse at all. So this remote for Sony actually works pretty simple. You have 3 cables. One of the cables is the ground cable, one is for activating focus, and the third cable is for taking a photo. So the remote actually works like the original trigger on the camera. If you press it lightly, the camera will focus, and if you press it further in, the camera will take a picture. So now you can just cut off the remote, we won't need it, and you're left with this cable and this special micro USB. At this point I should mention that you cannot use a normal micro USB cable you might have laying around. You need this 17-pin micro USB connector, which is especially for Sony. You can buy these online, but in my case buying the whole remote was cheaper and it even had faster shipping. And now it's just soldering everything together. In my case, the ground wire to the limit switch, the red wire to the limit switch, the ground and the gray wire to the other switch. You can use any switch you have laying around. If you don't want to use the second switch, you could also just solder the ground and the gray wire together. In that case, the camera would focus instantly when you plug the cable in, which also works. I mean, for that application it's absolutely fine. But I wanted to have a switch, so when the camera is on the tripod, I don't have to take the cable out or anything and I can adjust the focus. If you have a limit switch like the one I have, it's important that you connect to the left and the middle pin. I think in my case the connector was pinned to the left and the right pin. This is the normal limit switch configuration, but you need to wire it to the left and the middle, so it's a normal switch. So after that is done, I check if everything works properly.
Who is this, Valeria?
Looks good, so now to the installation. I quickly had to bend this screwdriver so it would fit under the enclosure. Now just screw the limit switch to the frame. I would recommend screwing it as far left as possible so you don't lose much printing space. And now move the printer manually to the side. After you heard it click, note down the number on the display. So now we move over to Cura. Do everything as usual, but now go to Extensions, Post-Processing, Modify G-Code, and then add the time-lapse script. In here it's important that you change some of the preferences. The first would be the pause length. So in my case 100 milliseconds are enough. It depends on your camera and your settings, but you will figure it out after 1 or 2 prints. So next you have to put in the coordinates of the switch. Here you should enter the number on your display. So in my case it was 218. Y isn't important for me, but I set it to 0 so it parks the print head in the corner while it takes a photo. And now I will just change the retraction. That value depends on your filament and the printer you're using, but you probably already know the perfect distance. Yeah, and now it's everything done. You can just normally start your print. The 3D printer will trigger the camera if everything is done correctly. In this video I had to pause the length a little too long and it took 2 pictures instead of 1 for every layer. But as I already mentioned, you can adjust the settings so it works for you. And you'll end up with 1 picture from every layer that you can combine to a time-lapse.